actually a good thing that comics are still monthly.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things in media where you do have to sit and wait.
Hey, welcome. It's been a interesting weekend as I'm recording this, dressed in hiking gear, ready to take off for our anniversary hike in some old growth forest. I'm kind of excited to check that out. Always get some good ideas walking in the forest. This weekend, I went down to the South Carolina Comic Con, and I really had a great day with a lot of people who I've connected well with on the show and after, and a bunch who I will be bringing onto the show in the near future. So it was pretty cool. My car, it overheated. I was so infuriated with myself. I topped off the levels in the radiator, and there was like an hour plus traffic jam trying to get to the parking lots. And my car just started acting funky. So I pulled over into this parking lot. I just said, I'm just going to leave it, see what happens. Hopefully it'll cool down and life will be good. And I got back at the end of the day. It needed just about 2 gallons of fluid to bring it back up. And it ran. I drove home. There's been no problem. So I skirted a disaster. But, it was all my fault because I didn't turn the cap all the way on for the radiator. So it, under pressure, popped off while I was driving down. And thankfully, it just landed on the inside of the skid plate, so I was able to fish it out. If you go to Substack, I think you'll be able to see a picture of the tool that I use sometime this week when I put it up. So I guess I got lucky by being stupid. This week's guest is Stephanie Williams, and she's the best. We had the nicest connection when we met each other in Charlotte. She's so generous and just is so excited about her craft and the privilege of telling the stories that she's able to tell. Like, this is a big thing and I had a fantastic time talking with her. She's just so generous. So I hope you enjoy the talk. She really, she's honest, completely honest about all aspects of her business. I hope you enjoyed the talk with Stephanie Williams.
It's never really actually the writing most of the time. It's all the external factors that because I knew, because I had a podcast scheduled this week, I was like, I bet you all the revisions of all the things that I've forgotten that I've written will come through this week. And they
Of course.
absolutely did. And of course, I had other like deadlines and stuff. So like this week has just been nuts. I know this is
Yeah.
going to continue to be insane. So it's like, I just got to survive till Monday. That's all I got to do. Cause like as soon as I get off the call with you, I was like, let me crank out these 4 comic pages. I was like, thank God the story, is like only 4 for this one thing. Cause I'm like, I don't have it in me to do another, and I'm lying because I have another thing that I need to go ahead and possibly pop out today too, so that I'm not doing that and the other thing tomorrow. So like insanity is thriving.
Yeah, no, I get it. So what do you do when you have these kind of crunch moments that
I
are
do what I
certainly a part of the
can.
comic business? Yeah.
Yeah, I just do what I can. I don't before I used to kind of work well into the night, even being tired, but I'm like, there's no point in doing that because one, you end up cranky. With
Mm-hmm.
your writing, things aren't clicking, you're getting more frustrated. It makes more sense to just put a hard stop, go to sleep, and then just
Yeah.
maybe get up early or just kind of rearrange your day. But I don't push myself to exertion anymore, exhaustion, I should say, anymore, because it doesn't work out. It just makes things way worse.
Yeah, it's like one of those law of diminishing returns.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
keep the output higher than what the input can be.
Hmm.
And ultimately, there's just, okay, maybe if you're 24, you can kind of
Yeah,
carry that on.
yes. But no, not as a 34-year-old mom to a
Right.
7-year-old. Absolutely not. Like tonight, I will not be cooking. And so my husband, like, either you can cook or we can get some takeout. But
Hmm.
I've cooked Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I was like, you're the cooking or we're getting takeout. But
Yeah.
me doing it, it's not happening tonight. Sometimes I like to do it because I'll think about, plots and story ideas and stuff. But I'm
Yeah.
like, tonight, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. I like doing dishes, and I will kind of like I will do the dishes in the morning on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
so I can have that sort of 10 minutes of just focusing. With my hands are busy. I don't have to think so much, but I can let
Yep.
my mind kind of be a little free. And it does help,
It helps a
versus,
ton.
yeah.
Yeah. So like, it helps a ton. I'll do laundry, fold all of these. So like the housework always gets done when I'm in the
Hmm.
throes of them throes of something, trying to
Of
work it
course.
out. And like the house looks the cleanest then because it's just been me trying to work out a problem or something.
Right.
So yeah, but no, today all those problems will have to get worked out at the desk. Because there is a time is ticking. I have a revision for a thing and they're like, "Hey, so like next week, right?" And it's for a graphic novel.
Okay.
So I'm like, I guess like
I
you
guess.
obviously, yeah, like you obviously need it next week. That's why you put it in the email. So like who am I to say no? I mean,
Right.
sometimes I will push back and say no, but for this one, it's like I can get it back to you because you all made the notes very clear.
Hmm.
And they were ideas that I already had after I sent it off. So I'm like, yeah, I can get it to you, but yeah, it's revision hell over here, plus new stuff
Yeah.
and an outline.
Is this is that the Raven cycle you're talking about from your
No, so
website?
like the Raven cycle, no. I turned in the second novel or the second adaptation for that back in January. I have not heard back from them yet, but
Okay.
I know that that's coming soon. So I
Okay.
probably just spoke it up. Like as soon as we get off this call, I bet you I get an email like, "Hey, we're
Well,
ready
yeah,
for
because you already had
revision."
the other stuff. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So I've.
One of my attitudes has always been with client work, has always been this tennis match philosophy. My goal is to get the ball back over the net as quick as possible, as
Hmm.
low as possible, and as deep as possible. Like
Hmm.
that's the because because clients will always wait so long. They'll take every second they can possibly take to make their choices and decisions, and
Hmm.
then we have to like kind of make up that slack. And I'm not throwing them under the bus, but it's just sort of how it works
I
because
mean,
it's
how it is.
typically a consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. Magic the Gathering finally made the announcement that I was writing a story for them. Mind you, Wizard still hadn't gotten back with their notes. And then that
Mm,
announcement was like made on Monday, Tuesday, yesterday. They finally got back with notes. So that
yeah.
also is due this week. And the editors were like apologetic and everything. And I'm like, well, I know how it is with Hasbro. It takes them forever to get
Mhm.
back, be it My Little Pony, Transformers, whatever. It just takes them a million years. And then it's just like, okay, well, it took us 2 months, but we hope it only takes you 48 hours to get this done. It's like, okay, well, whatever. So,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
you hope the editors at least know the
Oh,
volume of
yeah.
whatever they're
Oh,
requesting.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They're pretty good because again, like for any of the things that I have that came through this week, if I would have said no, I can't get it to you, then I can
Hmm.
get it to you the week after. They would have been understanding because everyone was like, "Hey, this took forever. So if you need like an extra week or a couple of days, let us know." And like I always say, I will try my best to get it to you when you need it or when you've requested. But if I'm unable to, I'll let you know 2 days in advance, or
Hmm.
here is when you'll get it to at the latest, just to kind of
Yeah.
give me some cushion. So, but enough of that.
No, no, this is important stuff because people listening, like, my intention is to have a conversation which
Yeah.
is, a rich conversation that can be entertaining for people who are not in the business, who are, hey, they love
Yeah.
what you do. Um, but also maybe it's going to inspire someone who either is thinking about this, or facing this themselves and they've never faced it before. Because, I remember having great advice given to me by a boss of mine a long time ago. And he said, listen, it's a ridiculous ask, what's being asked of you. If you ever feel as though you can't get it done on the timeline that the people are requesting, send them the email as quickly as you can when you make that you realize that,
Mhm.
and let them know, because people are far more willing to say, absolutely, we'll give you, more time, and handle that gracefully versus
Blowing
not
back.
getting what they want on
Yeah.
time and not knowing that was not going to happen. And yeah.
It's true. Because like for me, I always feel like it's a good indication that you have a grasp on your time management. It's just that life gets in the way, and that's something that you cannot control.
Hmm.
So because that is a variable that is, it's uncontrollable. Letting someone know ahead of time, like, hey, I thought I would be able to, but XYZ happened. So I'm probably going to be delayed. And I learned that very early on, even with writing articles and stuff for sci-fi fangirls, that yeah, I thought I would be able to get this to you all by like Tuesday, but no, I can't because my kid was sick. So I can get it to you by Friday. And then letting them
Right.
know that on like either as soon as it happens, even if it's only, 48 hours beforehand, it's still enough time, given whatever the project is, where they can make arrangements. Because that's always the thing, right? If you're late on something, then it affects everyone else's job and it's a last minute thing. If you give people enough time to come up with, to really enact those contingency plans or whatever they have, then that's usually when you don't get you don't get like
Yeah.
the looks, or they don't write you off and say, yeah, we're never going to work with
Hmm.
that person ever again. So yeah.
And you have to learn and navigate this stuff in proportion to success,
Yeah, you do.
because what we often maybe will envision success as this, this peak, that we sit upon, and we only have to focus on this one little thing or big thing in whatever case it is. But success, especially in the comic industry, means far more work coming at you.
Yes. Um, for I've been learning it's staying relevant
Hmm.
on not only the minds of the fans, but more importantly in the minds of the editors, because those are the folks who are actually handing out the job opportunities. So that means being timely with what you do.
Hmm.
Um follow I mean, I don't want to say following directions, but like when you get notes and stuff, actually implementing them, or
Yeah.
if you are pushing back, having a valid reason for doing so. Um, and I've been fortunate enough, all the editors that I've worked with, they've been really great with their communication. And even the ones where we had to kind of learn each other, that still worked out because thankfully
Hmm.
I had a career prior to writing comics where I had to communicate with doctors, and they can be difficult sometimes to effectively communicate with. Any doctors listening, I do apologize, but sometimes y'all are, and it's
Oh, but
okay.
they
They
know,
know, they
they
know.
know.
But that really taught me, or just science in general, just trying to talk to like a lab PI, just anyone. Sometimes STEM folks aren't the best communicators.
Hmm.
I know I had to grow in that way. So because of that, taking kind of that skill set that I learned there when it comes to talking to editors and stuff and seeing like what their working style is. Are they someone who is just going to give you all the stuff that you screwed up on up front and then maybe a nice note at the bottom like, but you gotta got this right? Or are they gonna sandwich the thing where you you get a compliment, then it's just like what you didn't do right, or not what you didn't do right, but what could be improved, and then another
Hmm.
compliment and all of that. And also how to effectively communicate with them in regards of references and stuff. I'm a Black woman. I don't encounter too many other Black women who are editors, which means sometimes a lot of stuff that is not going to be innate with the editors that I work
Hmm.
with, and it's just because it's a cultural difference. And a
Sure.
lot of books that I've worked on have featured predominantly Black casts, so there are things that I'm including that there might be a cultural gap there, and I don't expect the editor to know that off bat, and that's okay that they don't. It's my job to just kind of effectively communicate that and say, hey, even if you don't fully understand this, just trust that like I know what I do. I'm doing, and let me explain to you like where I'm coming from with this, and then I'm hoping that you'll have trust that I know what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
again, so far, like that, that has been the case, and I've been thankful that's been the case. So yeah.
I think that's, and then having had a little bit of time talking with you back in, I guess that was at um, Charlotte not too long
Hmm.
ago. I got to believe that might have a lot to do with your science background, where you have to footnote things. Like
Yeah.
you can't just say, here's what it is.
Hmm.
And because it's written down, you have to trust it. No, you have to say this information came from this source. So that sort of footnoting, and validating something is kind of a parallel to what you're talking about in communication with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong skill set that you are able to cross over.
Absolutely. It's just funny because a lot of folks, when they hear I came from a science background, they think, well, that must help with your research. It absolutely does. But it also helps in the way that you just mentioned with the footnote and like really explaining stuff to folks in a way that they wouldn't understand because it's science jargon. So also
Mhm.
not even, I don't want to say dumbing down the science, but articulating the science in a way that an everyman could understand. You should not need a college degree to understand what I am saying in this report. um,
Right.
you should hopefully be able to read because like there's only other, if I could give you pictures I would, but you should still be able to understand it at like a ninth or 10th grade reading level. And
Mhm.
that's the same way that I approach comics in the way that for a lot of for some folks, or at least the people that I am trying to talk to, maybe they aren't all that familiar with comics. Maybe it's been a while since they've read them, or maybe they are folks who have read comics for decades. I always want to, or I always strive to write stories that feel welcoming no matter who you are. It's the
Mhm.
same way that I wrote my articles when I would talk about different comic characters and doing their deep dives, because comics can, or superhero comics specifically, can feel so just massive.
Mhm.
In all of the lore and mythology and different iterations of characters, like where do you begin? Like Cannonball, for instance, like, has like 4,000 appearances across
Oh,
all of the X books. That's a lot.
Jesus.
And that's not
Really?
even,
Sam
yes.
Sam's been
Yeah,
busy.
Sam, yeah, Sam. Oh, and I bring him up because Sam's a character that, unless you're really an X fan, you probably don't know. But he's been in
Mhm.
a lot of stuff from X-Men to Avengers and all of that. So, for someone who probably hasn't read a ton of that, and even though he's been in that much stuff, like he's still not a character that a lot of folks like just know off top. So, my approach to, if I'm writing Cannibal or something like that, I would still trying to make him a welcoming character where you don't feel as though you need all this background information, by getting the foundational pieces of what makes him him over these 4,000 appearances.
Right.
Because that's always there. It's not about um, it's about remixing essentially. That's what we
Mhm.
did with Nubia. Remixed her origin, try to stay true to the original one, but it's still remixed in a way that she comes through the Well of Souls, which we took the Cavern of Souls from the late great George Perez. So I just thought that was a brilliant way to bring life onto Themyscira, and not and not Cinnamon in that way, uh,
Mhm.
or whatever. But we remixed it, but we still kept the, I guess, the foundational pieces of Nubia by making her, she was the champion of Doom's Doorway. The Nubia that you meet in 204, Wonder Woman 204, she is a she is the, why am I blanking on this word? She's a champion from Mars, essentially. And she
Okay.
shows up to challenge Diana. Taking that champion piece, if she's a champion from Mars, that means that she's a fierce fighter. She is efficient at what she does. She's really skilled at what she does. So then we make her the champion of Dune's Doorway to guard that door. And the best, because she's the longest running Amazon to have done that, that speaks to how highly skilled she is, how great she is at battle, how smart she is to be able to do something like that. So that was keeping a lot of what was introduced to her character in those two or three appearances early on before she disappeared, and then reappeared again randomly in the 90s. But it's remixing that because I don't know, like I read a lot of older comics, which people find out and they're just like, well, why would you do that? Because like it's not like older comics are fairly kind to marginalized folks. But for
Well,
me, no, not at all. But for me, like they're not all terrible either. Even the ones that are bad, the way that I look at them, there's still something to take from that.
mhm,
Be it what not to do,
right.
what could be fixed, and also comics, like any form of media, are a snapshot of the time that it was written
Sure.
in.
Yeah.
And from a historical point, I absolutely love that because you get to kind of see, you really get a nice idea of where we were at the time and how far we need to go. But I still saw even some of the stuff that made me cringe when reading the older Nubia appearances. There were a lot of things that I was like, okay, but I do see something here
Mhm,
that is useful moving forward. So and I think that again goes back to a STEM background and research where you're not fully scrapping someone's idea or anything like that. You just want to improve upon it. Or if you're trying to prove it wrong, you still got to look at that source material and
sure.
test that thesis, and do all of these experiments to either prove it wrong, prove it right, or my favorite thing, find something completely new.
Mhm.
So it's just really crazy how it all is related, or I've been able to find some relations to it.
Yeah. Well, no, I, I, I think it's. I mean, for me, I think it's really interesting how, first off, these characters have to. Some of these characters cover decades. I mean, like 50 years,
Hmm.
and nothing remains the same in 50 years. But we have to somehow keep these characters the same, but keep them relevant, and
Hmm.
that requires this form of evolution that doesn't change the sort of the I don't know the elements that make them who they are
Hmm.
so much, but makes them of interest to the reader of the time that these are being produced. Because we're not going to read the Batman comic from 1952 and go, gosh, this is great. If it was being done today, we would
No.
just go, okay, it's kitsch, but why are they? We can we get back to regular Batman, please?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what you need to do. And you were talking about writing and like with utilizing Cannonball as an example. I mean, writing is not different than meeting people in the real world. You don't walk up to someone and go, so who are you? What's your backstory? Tell me everything about you so I can get an idea who you are. We're really good at letting out the information that we want to give out verbally and physically. And those two combinations really give so much to us as human beings to one another.
Yeah.
So as a writer, our job is to communicate these literal and visual, cues so an artist can extrapolate on that and
Yeah.
build upon and oh, okay, I get this. Sam, because Sam is not the 16-year-old boy he was in 1982. He's older now, but
Mhm.
he's not Reed Richards old. So like he has to be like somewhere in this younger category, but he's a veteran. He's a young veteran. And you say,
Yeah.
okay, and you have to get this across to people without having these monologues or whatever or narration to slow down the actual story you're telling.
Mhm.
So yeah, they're beautiful challenges. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah. They are beautiful challenges, and that is the whole point, which kind of makes it all the more fun when you do kind of stick that landing,
Hmm.
and you are able to, in my case, reintroduce a character who, in a lot of ways, felt new. Newbie was a very interesting kind of outlier because she's a character who was introduced almost 50 years ago, but at the same time, you had like maybe two handful of appearances from her over that span, different iterations of her over that time span. But even with that, she still has somewhat. She had a fan base. She still had
Hmm.
folks who checked for her, which I thought was just a testament to the character. So because of that, to me, if this character has been able to stay alive and relevant to some folks for this long, that means that they've been making stories up for her in their mind. How do you
Mm,
compete with someone's imagination? I don't
sure.
have the answer for that because I don't know if you can really compete with anyone's imagination. But what you could do is have things or elements there that they would possibly have. So, like this common ground, and it's finding a relatability there. And that was something I was like, I'm gonna have to lean on that. And because Diana rarely goes home, and whenever she does, she's there, they're fighting, or something has happened, but we don't really get a lot of time with the Amazons like that. I was like, okay, well then I need to focus on like who are the Amazons? What does that look like? And that took a lot of I think I read like I lived and breathed George Perez's run.
Mm,
I read, but even before I got to that, I actually read Circe. So Circe by Madeline Miller. And I'm so
yeah.
happy I did that because for that novel, she focused on women being the central part to everything. They were both the heroes, the villains, your anti heroes, all of that. And when I think of the Amazons, that's what I think of. I think of women whose lives aren't centered around men, and I don't mean just like men not being there. I mean like their
Right,
lives
right, right.
really, their men are non-existent, other than the gods, but not even really because they haven't really spoke to the gods like that, or they don't on a regular day basis. So in that I was like, okay, well, the best way to kind of show and prove who Nubia is and also the Amazons is to make the focus solely on them. So we're going to have to stay on Themyscira. And not only are we going to have to stay on Themyscira, the villain will have to be someone who is central to Themyscira. And that ended up being Medusa. Um, and I took inspiration from Madeline Miller's Circe because again, like the villain in that story, or villains, they were all women. And for Medusa, I was like, well, she's a villain, but not really. She's a villain in the world of man, but she should look a little bit different in the world of Themyscira because
Hmm.
her punishment was as a result of a man being involved. So if we are subtracting men from this, then the focus should be then on Athena, who is the one who punishes her. And why is
Right.
that? And then why is it that some of the on Themyscira, some of the women were blessed by the gods, while this one woman was condemned by one? So, like, what does that look like? So there became a lot of questions that originally, I didn't have at first, but really started to have as I got into the research of it. So it's like if we're staying on Themyscira and we make the focus solely on Nubia and her Amazons, then all of these questions are going to have to be aimed at them. So we're going to have to get uncomfortable all the way. So, like, what does it mean to be an Amazon? What does it mean to be on Themyscira? Why is it that the Amazons feel as though have this privilege to separate themselves from man's world, even though their entire island is populated by women who once were there and fell due to violence in man's world. And that was violence at anyone's hands. Because if we are focusing solely on the patriarchy, anybody can uphold that. That's why it's so prevalent. That's why
Mm.
it is so strong because it has many agents, and they are not all men. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
so so because of that, I was like, this book is gonna go one of two ways. People are really gonna hate it, or hopefully kind of pick up on what we were trying to accomplish there by, I mean, really questioning all that, not only just Diana, but just like what the Amazons represent. And for a very long time, at least from my vantage point, it was just a lot of white feminism, which sometimes feels very not inclusive. So I was like, if this black woman is going to be queen of the Amazons, even though racial identity and all of that on Themyscira is not the same as it is in man's world, um, inherently to me, because I am writing it, it's gonna have to look a little different so that it could be relatable to whoever is picking this book up, because I don't
Hmm.
want it to be only some folks picking it up and being able to relate to it. I'm like, no, I want to, if we're opening up the mascara on the page, I want to open up the mascara to the readers as well. And that is not just women. I wanted anyone to be able to pick up this book and find some type of relatability there. Because the best stories are the ones where, again, even if someone hates it, they hate it because it reminded them of something that triggered them in
Sure.
some kind of way, right? And they were there, so there was a relatability there, a negative
Hmm.
one, but it was there. So
Well, that's not a, I mean, hating something is a reaction, and
mhm.
that's good, you
Yeah,
know, in so many ways, because apathy would be the that's the reaction you don't want. If
yeah,
someone
that's
just
the one
reads
you
it and
don't
goes
want.
like,
Yeah,
okay, and they move on, because it hasn't moved the needle in any direction. And at least if you're being, and I'm not saying provocative
yeah,
in a negative connotation, but I mean, if you're trying to prosecute some sort of idea, you know, there has to be, just, this is a force, and there's going to be positive and negative results from a force being introduced into an environment. So, um, how did you? Because it's kind of interesting listening to you talk about it. I thought, oh, okay, you're also developing an alien existence, because this doesn't exist,
mhm.
and we're fictitious characters in a fictitious environment, and the template doesn't really exist. So you're creating something that is so alien, like we can't just go look at it from the, okay, well, this is the 21st century, American point of view to this. Like, ultimately that might be the result, but the point is that, like, how do you do something that doesn't feel like you're just, okay, we're just moving these little pieces around, and now look at, see, ta-da, these people are in charge. Like, it doesn't, it stops being sort of like a thought experiment. It just becomes, paper dolls, just
Yeah.
plaque. Oh, okay, here's a sweater, and here's a pair of pants.
So I'm pretty sure I'm paraphrasing, not paraphrasing this on the spot, but I remember Octavia Butler said something that the limitations of man extends to how we envision aliens, and
Mhm.
often it's kind of just like we move pieces around to this human, and now it's alien. So
Mhm.
in thinking of the mascara, the Amazons, all of them that way, I was like, okay, so I gotta pretty much treat this world like it doesn't exist, because it doesn't exist. So if it
Mhm.
doesn't exist, and it isn't affected by all the things that we have to deal with in the real world, what does that look like? So really actually leaning into imagination. And if this is a world where again, race, sex, all of that, all these different constructs are non-existent in that way, um, then how would these women thrive? But not just how would they thrive, what would be their shortcomings? Because even in the absence of men on here, because if we're just saying like, well, if we remove men, then life would be great. No, that's not really true. Because there's always going to be something, there's always going to be some point of contention, something that arises that divides
Hmm.
whatever it is. So it really became that. It really became like really leaning into imagination and forgetting, not forgetting, but not allowing myself to implement, because it would have been really weird if I would have had like one of the Amazons be racist towards Nubia. That wouldn't make any
No.
sense at all. Like it just wouldn't, to me, like that their sisterhood,
Hmm.
their arguments and everything, it's just gonna be, it would just be different. Like it just, to me, it did not make sense to make race a blatant thing. In coordination special, Nubia has a conversation with Martian Manhunter. So it's not like she's not aware that that is a thing, because she's been in man's world. So that was a way to show that, like, yeah, she's aware of it. It just does not apply when she goes back to Themyscira, because whatever issues that she has with these women who have been on this island since they came out of that well, are not going to be steeped in that. Um, and yeah, so because we could say like, yeah, maybe I don't know, race would be a thing, but if we're talking about something that is alien, that does not exist, for me, that was not a thing.
Hmm.
So it was kind of trusting in that, and that's hard, because how do you write about something that you don't know?
Yeah, I mean I mean that is the challenge. You know, the
Yeah,
challenge is how do you write something that is, you know, a different version of whatever it is, whether it's your own point of view, whether it is whatever the thing is, that's where the hard work comes in, you know, I mean, because listen, we could all kind of write our story
yeah,
and, you know, make the characters all believe and think and feel the way that we do. And that's our job's real easy at that point.
yeah,
But not doing that is a far more greater and richer solution because every work you do has to be a new solution, you know, under that premise versus
yeah.
just, hey, it's the Stephanie character, just slap on a different costume and away we go, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there is absolutely no fun in that. I'm not saying that self inserts don't happen, or aren't warranted for certain things, but
Hmm.
that's the other thing, as a writer, is knowing when to not do that. And that's hard.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's really hard. Just, I guess, related but unrelated. There is a new series that came out on Amazon Prime called Swarm. It is about this young woman named Dre, who essentially is a serial killer. She's a black woman who's a serial killer. We don't
Okay.
ever see that, right? So that
No.
in itself is already polarizing, because it's just negative out the gate. But
Hmm.
the conversations that I've seen surrounding that is because in the I guess a lot of the negative surrounding that is because people have been unable to separate, um I guess, personal feelings of what they think a black woman would do or wouldn't do in the case of Dre. And the thing is that Dre is a fictional character who is operating in a way that we often see other characters, like I think of Dexter. Um,
Sure.
and people say, well, Dexter doesn't count because there are redeeming qualities about him. Are there? Or have you
Mm.
just, or are you just saying that for you, like these are your redeeming qualities? Because for me, when I watched, this character on the screen, I'm like, well, no, there really aren't any redeeming qualities, but it doesn't mean that I can't be empathetic to her plight.
Hmm.
Because I mean, that's where the redeeming quality comes in. Is like, can you find empathy to have towards this character? So, are you really more so saying that you personally could not find? empathy to extend towards his character? And if so, then that is more of a conversation for you to interrogate versus something on the writers in this bit. So it's just been really interesting to kind of see the conversations surrounding this very fictional story that on the surface level looks like it is an attack on Beyonce and the Beehive. And I have tickets to see Beyonce in Charlotte, so I'm very much a huge fan, but was able to still kind of watch this and understand that it's not really about that. It's really more so about this character and her guilt and obsession and how it manifests for her, and it manifests for her very violently.
Mm.
And it was unnerving, but it was unnerving in the same way that I find Junji Ito stories that I've recently really gotten into. So again, I was coming at it from that perspective and wondering, well, if I were to read a Junji Ito s story, but it was in black, how would I feel? And now I know because that story kind of made me feel that way. Um, and I feel like I just lost my train of thought by going on that tangent. But I guess the point that I'm trying to say is that I don't know. I just find like maybe just as of recently, or maybe now because I'm creating and not just critiquing without creating, that I'm finding that sometimes it's really hard for folks to separate themselves from their work. And I don't
Hmm.
mean separate yourself in a way that none of you shows up, but really operate from a place of a conductor of sorts versus, just kind of having like a clone factory and just kind of inserting different tweaks of yourself into something. And it's something I'm still discovering. Sometimes even when I think that I haven't, there is no Stephanie here, it's there. Um,
Well, I think it's impossible.
yeah,
I mean, it is. I mean, unless you have some sort of neurological condition,
yeah.
I don't think you can completely divorce yourself from the creations that are on page. And comic books different than prose in the sense that the characters exist,
Hmm.
by and large. The bulk of the characters that you have access to in your writing, they're not whole cloth creations. They exist already in some fashion, and it's your responsibility to tell a proper story, but still, like an animator, stay on model. Like you
Yes.
can't go too far because it's a conversation that you have to have with the editorial staff, who then has to have a conversation with the publishing staff. If you're like, hey, I've got this idea to take it this way, but it takes it off of model, which is it's a rarity, and that happens because you know it's a business. It's hey, we have a fan base out there that wants to read this character.
Yeah, so maybe,
Hopefully.
so yeah, yes. So maybe I was kind of articulating wrong. I guess what I was trying to get at is, um, now allowing whatever is to derail who that character is. It's kind of like a kid, and
Hmm.
you're hopefully not projecting you onto that
Yep.
child, but also understanding that that child is separate from you and their own thing. That's the way that I view the characters too. Like they are their
Hmm.
own thing. Now, some stuff we might be in alignment with, but I don't know, for Lex Luthor, for instance, like that's not somebody who is just inherently charitable unless he's getting something on the back end of that, right? So I would
Which is
not
not
write
charitable.
him. No, yeah, I would not. Right, so right, so I wouldn't write him doing charity. Um, just I
Or
wouldn't
you
write him doing
would, but you
charity.
would.
It would be
But if you did,
he's
yeah, I
getting
mean, it's
something
a
back.
plot line,
Yeah,
right? It's a plot line in the story,
yeah.
and and it's like it's the smoke and mirrors thing. I mean, listen, we see it a lot in politicians. We go, this doesn't line up with the behavior that I know of this person, or I've
Hmm.
historically of this person. What's
So what's
going
going
on now?
on?
There's a whole bunch of people who might be like, "Yay, we're getting the thing that we hoped we would get," but this other factor is like something's up, and that would be with the Lex Luthor thing. I mean, he's like, "All right, fine, I'll spend money to get people to get behind me on something," and haha.
Yeah, and then so well, if we kinda stay with that then, um, you're dealing with readers who may not be catching that right away and thinking that you are completely writing this character wrong, not waiting for the story to fully
Mhm.
go all the way to
Yes.
the end, and it's like, "No, it was actually doing this for a reason."
Yes.
And lately, because of the way that we are consuming things where you get to watch something all in one sitting, monthly comics, it kinda sucks right now
It does.
to write them or even sometimes read them because you gotta wait. But especially
Mhm.
on the creator side, now that I've been, I've had some comics that have been monthly, ooh, it's a little rough because it's just like, "But wait, like, no, that's not
Right.
I know what I'm doing, like, you gotta let me get to the end of it." Then you also have it where there aren't a lot of books that are running with one creative team for years. You're lucky if you get a 6 months to a year out of
Yeah.
that. I think of some of the, Uncanny X-Men stories that I enjoy so much, but Chris Claremont and John Byrne, even though they don't talk,
Mhm.
were able to work with each other for a very long time. Him and Chris Claremont and Jim Lee were able to work with each other for
And
a good
Paul
amount of
Smith,
time. Yeah, to like yeah,
Dave Cockrum,
all
like
all
the
all of yes.
yeah.
Um,
Yes.
there's some type of, longevity, longevity there, and now, like, you don't really get that. Actually, I just saw the announcement for Kelly Thompson's, Captain Marvel run coming to it in, issue 50.
Okay.
That wow. Truly,
Yeah.
just wow, that is astounding and phenomenal, and hats off for 50 issues in this climate, in this economy, as someone would say, like,
Mhm.
that's something.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really delved into it, why that's the case. I don't know whether it is the model now is kind of get in and get out, get in and get out, like do a
Yeah,
thing, do a thing, do a thing. I don't know if
events.
I'm yeah, I mean the events, that's a great point. The events really do kind of run a lot of the narrative arcs for the big two. Maybe there's just not as much space to have these things happen.
Yeah,
That's not the case now. It's like, okay, well here's the magic wave that's going to go over across everything. And it's a very holistic, complicated model, which is hats off in the terms of being able to pull it off, but it does or could or may, don't know, no proof here, but it could inhibit this whole sort of concept of these long sort of legacy stories being told.
absolutely. I mean, for Nubia and the Amazons, which was always going to be a limited 6-issue series, that was a tie-in to Trial of the Amazons. So
Mm,
which made things infinitely tricky because here we are reintroducing this character, also reintroducing folks to the Amazons themselves, building up the Mascaran lore, all of these things so that by the time we get to Trial of the Amazons, you care. So that was a momentous task. And then also to still hopefully make it so that Nubia herself has somewhat of a story separate from that because she deserves that as she's just her first time really being on the page for you know a consistent basis.
right. Yeah,
Um,
sure.
so really it was okay, so can you write a story in 5 issues for her with the 6th issue being solely dedicated to this tie-in?
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
was disruptive as hell. It really honestly was.
Well, because your arc is your arc,
Mhm.
and that challenge, listen, on a brain, connectivity thing. Okay, cool. It does offer you an interesting puzzle to solve,
Mhm.
but wouldn't it be great if it was just 6 issues of a story that concludes in issue 6, and it's a story contained by itself. And I'm not,
Yeah.
like, once again, I'm not knocking
Yeah.
the model. It's just a matter of, it's hard because, hey, I'm a 12-year-old young woman. I'm making a story up here, and I'm going into a comic book store for the first time, and I see the trade collection of Nubia, with Sway's cover on there, and you go,
Mhm.
"Oh, I think this looks pretty cool. This looks like something I want to read." And you read it, and then it's like, "Oh, I'm getting the story's great. The story's great. Wait, what's happening here?" Like, the whole thing kind of ends with a question mark, and
Yeah.
then, like, which makes a weird, like, meanwhile, the Romanian judge is holding up a low score up once you jump off of the trapeze here, or whatever the thing is, because it makes no sense. Your landing just doesn't stick, and it's not yours. You didn't make a poor landing. It just, to the outside of the uninitiated. Going back to what you were saying about that wall of historic information, which is a barrier for
Mhm.
entry for anything. It's like going into, I don't know if you play music, or you like music, but, like,
Yeah.
you go to like, the worst thing for a person who doesn't play guitar very well, maybe even if you do, going into a music store, and the look on the faces of most people when you walk into the guitar store of, like, what are you doing in here?
Yeah, I've been to a Guitar Center with my husband, yeah.
It is so high,
Yeah.
like, if you pick that guitar off the wall and you're not playing like some virtuoso, why did you bother? And going into the record store and everyone judging you about, like, where you are in the store and what you're picking up, run over the jazz section and pull out some obscure jazz album. People think I'm cool, but, like, the comic shop is not that different. Like, it's a barrier to entry. So having a 6-issue collected thing that doesn't sort of, like, act as a contained story is kind of tough for people who are trying to walk into a new world.
Yeah, it is, and it's unfortunate, like, sometimes it still works out, and,
Mhm.
my hope is always, that someone will, like, finish and say, "Oh, I wanna read more." I
Sure.
hope, because 'cause I've noticed, even in my readings with, Marvel Unlimited, and also DC Infinite Universe, we have all of these comics available to you, and you get to go way back, and like I said, I'm someone who is an avid reader of older comics. A lot of times I'll pick something at random and I didn't know it was a part of whatever event, and then I'll go and I'll search out these other books. And I would say, like
Mhm.
now, thanks to technology and the library, which is an amazing resource, it's a lot easier to go and pick up where a question mark was left. But,
Right.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was something that was not as easy to
Mhm.
do. And I can see how definitely if Nubia and the Amazons that came out back then, that would have just been like, well, we're just here now. You definitely get a 2 on your scorecard because of that. But I'm hoping now, that's happening few and far in between, but it is something that um I think it would be nice if just people in the comics community, and I mean really more so fans when they're reading, just kind of understood that I, things are different. It's okay that they're different. It doesn't mean that
Sure.
it's all bad at all, but things are kind of different. So I guess reading things in the same way that you were 10 years from now, 15 years, I mean, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, doesn't really work. I mean, again, I go back to how we watch TV. We don't watch TV the same. We don't even watch movies the same.
No.
We don't even read news the same. A lot of folks are
No.
getting their news from TikTok, and that's from like 15-second videos where you don't even know if it's been fact checked.
Right. Yeah.
So, so with all of these things in mind, if you are not consuming things the same, then you should not be judging them through the same metrics because
Mhm.
I don't know, I just feel like that needs to evolve. And I feel in some ways they are, but in other ways, I don't think they are. And that hurts.
Yeah, I mean, we can't be too harsh of a critics on
Oh, yeah,
ourselves in this
yeah,
one,
yeah.
because, like, it's evolving so much faster than we are.
Yeah.
So, like,
Mhm.
we're playing anthropological catch up at all times.
Yes.
Like we've been playing this game for 100 and close to 150 years since the industrial revolution kicked into full swing.
Yeah.
So it is a tough thing for human beings to kind of just go, wait, what, like, I mean, we're
Yes.
just playing this catch up game. So um I applaud like like an HBO who dialed back the Netflix, dump it all at once
Yes.
model. And they're like, you know what, once a week. And I remember, like, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, I kept saying to my wife, I'm like, I, I don't like this binging thing. Like, I don't remember what's happening. And I realized that, like, that week in between was a great opportunity for me to think about the show that I liked,
Mhm.
talk about it with some friends, at the cooler, like, well, Bob,
Mhm.
what did you think about that? And next thing you know, like, they're like, no, 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 have it all at once. And you like, wait, what season was that? Who were we talking? Like, I just can't keep up with that.
It's, and I feel like, I don't know how true this might be, but it really felt like a moment. WandaVision, and
Hmm.
because that was weekly, I think that
Right.
was the first time in a while, since like Scandal or any of that, but because this was streaming, that was the first time in a very long time that I think people might have remember how actually nice it is to have a week to think about something
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
anticipate this coming out. Because
That's the best part.
it is, because like, is it nice to be able to stream something all in one sitting? Like last year I watched Sex in the City. I'd never seen it before. Like I knew
You
of
did.
it culturally,
You,
right?
you did. You went in.
I went in, and it was because I kept seeing clips from And Just Like That. And I
Okay.
was like, okay, well, I gotta know. I need to know. Like, it's time to finally figure it out. And I binged all of those seasons, plus the
Hmm.
movies, and then And Just Like That, I think in a month span. Now, was I having a great time when I did that? Absolutely. But after I finally got caught up, I was mad because now what? Because now it's all
Right.
over, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And I questioned, did I really savor it? So then I went and I did another rewatch of the show, and then this
Okay.
time kind of did it a lot slowly. And there was stuff that I missed because I was just
Hmm.
watching it like that. And
Well,
like,
your attention, I guarantee you were dividing your attention, because
absolutely,
because when you're binging, you're sort of like, you got the phone
I'm
out, maybe
always
you're
doing
flipping
something
through a
else.
magazine, it's a tough thing to, but
Yeah,
when the machine says you only get one a week, like, you kind of like sit down and go, okay, I'm paying attention. And, like, I mean, HBO is even much more like, I'm like, hey, we don't even start streaming it until 9 p.m. on Sunday.
yeah,
So you can't, like, get up at 7 in the morning on Sunday and watch it and go, haha, like, you have to wait. So, I mean, it brings you to a point where, like, be there and pay attention
be
and
present.
enjoy. Yeah, because I think because, like, we've been saying, there's all this stuff happening at all times for us. It's such a treat to give ourselves that opportunity of presence, to sit there and read the thing, to
Mhm.
watch the thing, to listen to the thing, rather than, well, let's see, I could go for a run and listen to the podcast, and then I can call that person on my cool down. Like, I mean, like, we're trying to layer all this stuff on, and none of that stuff is an actual experience because we're pulling ourselves away from it. And I don't know how we function without trying to layer this stuff on, but
Yeah. I d I don't I don't know either, and I guess bringing it back to comics, that's why I'm just kinda like, it's actually a good thing that comics are still monthly.
yeah.
It's one of the few, things in media where you do have to sit and wait, and
Hmm.
it's okay. Even now with, uh, both Marvel and DC just talking about the big two adopting the webtoons model, because I've had a chance to work with Marvel's Infinity comic vertical. Those come out weekly, but even there, you still gotta wait. We're not
Hmm.
delivering all 6 episodes or 5 or whatever it is all in one sitting. You still have to wait a week.
Hmm.
So like, hey, actually sit with these panels, sit with this page, sit with the dialogue, and I don't know, just like sit with that because I
Hmm.
see folks and even myself sometimes miss things because you're so focused on what's to come next. And
Sure.
is and then like as a writer, focusing on what's to come next is real tricky because like you kind of have to because well you need to know where you're driving the story, but
Hmm.
also it can be a slippery slope too because then you end up not being present in the thing that you're actually writing right now and making sure that
Right.
that's solid so that when you do get to the thing that you're super excited about it makes sense.
Hmm.
um
Totally.
yeah, it's I say all my ramblings today clearly to say that it's I feel like I am both excited and always terrified because of one, did I ever think that I would be writing comics? No, I did not.
Mm.
I didn't even think I would be writing for a living, period. If anything, I thought the closest I'd be to writing was like writing lab reports or like research papers. But even then, just no. So to be where I am and to have the trajectory that I did tells me that I should absolutely be both excited and terrified at the same time because the road to get here was exhilarating and horrifying. It was taking a leap
Hmm.
of faith
Yeah.
and betting on myself and hoping that before I smacked into the ground that either my web slingers they came out when I did, or I caught that gust of wind, or I was able to, get my wings out before I hit the ground. But I don't know. I just feel like I don't know if I would have been able to take this path 10 years ago, 15 years
Yeah.
ago.
Why? I mean, why comics for you?
I I just have an unhealthy love with them possibly. So for me, my origin story with comics is from soap operas. So
Oh, well, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, after school, we would usually go to my grandparents' house because my mom and my dad were at work. So we would just be there until they got off work. And on the days that I didn't go to school, we would go over there, or I would go over there, and my grandparents would always be watching, my grandmother more so would be watching soap operas. And even if I
Mm,
didn't stay with her and I got old enough and I was at home by myself, it was The Price is Right, and then whatever, I think Young and the Restless or whatever soap opera came on Channel 2 after that.
okay.
And I remember, like, as melodramatic and just outlandish as these stories were, they were still very entertaining. So, the very first comic I actually sat through and I read all the way through was Avengers 371, I believe. I might be wrong on that number, but in the story, it is Dane, Cersei, and Crystal. So Dane, the Black Knight,
Okay. Yep.
but they're in like this love triangle, and they have that going
Oh.
on. And Vision is, I think, at this time, him and Scarlet Witch are no longer together because the whole thing has already happened with Mephisto and his baby hands and all of this stuff. And Vision is like looking out the window and he is watching Dane, I believe, kiss Crystal. And he is aware of
Okay.
like this triangle and stuff. And even as like Vision looks out the window all at the melodramatics happening, he himself is having like this Shakespeare moment of like, well, am I too still capable of love or something like that? But I bring all of that up because it reminded me of those soap operas. The way that it was,
Sure.
the way that the page turn was, the just the composition and the shots and the acting, all on the all on
Hmm.
the artist part. It reminded me of soap operas, and I think that is where I found the connection. I was like, oh, cool. So like superhero comics, they're just they're soap operas, but like the people are wearing capes and they save the world sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is when yes. And that is when I fell in love with them and found Archie, and I spent so much time with Archie Digest because that was easier for me to sneak into the cart at the grocery store, to the point where my
Okay,
mom was like,
sure.
I
Yeah.
don't know why you're sneaking this to the cart. You know that I always encourage reading, just put it up there. So
Okay. And another
Archie
soap opera.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So much time I spent in Riverdale. And definitely Archie, Veronica, Betty, their love triangle, folks coming on to Jughead and him being like, no, I actually just really love burgers, but you be cool. So all of that, Josie popping
Hmm.
up, Sabrina, all these Cheryl, all of that, that was my connection to comics. And I think because of that connection, that is why with older comics I'm able to go back and I'm just kind of like, even if I don't see myself, there's still like a relatability there for me because I am there for the drama. I am there for all of these other things, other than just purely representation. When it's there, I am
Hmm.
ecstatic. When Monica showed up in Spider-Man Annual 16 and we got her origin story, I was happy when I finally read that
Yeah.
comic and then followed her along with the Avengers. But I think that's why. So for me, comics was always just a really beautiful medium for storytelling. You have these
Hmm.
words and the pictures, or the art, I should say, in concert with one another. And I didn't fully understand how much of a ballet or orchestra it was until actually, started doing comics journalism and like really learning how much editors are involved, lettering, all of that, all the way up to your editor in chief, and then now writing them. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. Like if one's wheel is squeaky, then this thing, the ride's not going to be that great. But if it wasn't comics, it would have been romance novels. Because next to
Okay.
comics,
Sure.
that is something that I really hold near and dear to my heart, and very specifically, Black romance novels, because those are stories where, I just got to see Black folks just being regular. Sometimes
Hmm.
they where like a woman was a scientist and she fell in love with someone who was a concert pianist, whatever. It was really just
Hmm.
nice to kind of see those things. So comics just feel very free. um
Yeah.
and I feel like it's a great way to kind of talk about stuff that might be uneasy to talk about, and kind of insert it into the page and get people talking about things that they normally wouldn't, or see things differently than they would from a history, like a regular, history textbook.
That is the writing thing. It is, you're describing that perfect challenge. And it all kind of clicks into place when you're saying this, and because you were really sweet and kind, and you gave me a copy of Living Heroes, and like, well, that's it. There's your romance comic. There's
Yeah.
your representational romance comic, and you're saying, oh, you want a romance novel. I'm thinking, well, I mean, there's a market for you to do,
Oh, trust
a
me,
romance
Alex.
comic.
Oh, so yeah, there so I sent off the revisions to a pitch for a romance novel.
Good.
Yeah, because no, trust me, anything that I've written, I've snuck some romance in there some way. And I don't mean just outright, we're kissing, we're doing stuff, but just the intimacy that I learned from those books and applying it
Hmm.
to the Cape comics that I write. Cuz I'm like, I'm not seeing too much. Like I really love those older X-Men stories because the cool stuff that actually happened is all in a danger room. You have these really intimate moments
Hmm.
amongst the
Yeah.
action, but this is when you get the characters having great conversations and showing who they are, as they try to survive whatever Professor Xavier has dialed the knob up to, or just the more quieter moments again before we get to the action, and just seeing these characters for who they are aside from their abilities. And I think that's something because of romance novels, like you see all this in your heroes. Before they finally kiss for the first time or decide to say yes to going out on a date or something like that. So I feel like I've been just just inherently and innately just applying that because I live and breathe it. So it ends up
Hmm.
popping up even when I'm not trying to. But I think that's been my X factor too with a lot of the stuff that I've written because again, like, everyone's concerned with feats and like, what's the really cool action page and stuff like that. And that's fine because I
Sure.
love that stuff too. But like, no, I want you to like be rooting for this character before they do that feat so that when by the time we get to it, that you're like, oh my God, they just overcame their fear from like six when they fell off the slide or whatever on
Hmm.
the same day that um they had a really terrible birthday or whatever.
Right.
So so
Oh
so
man.
yes, like
Now you can remember my terrible birthday when I was a kid.
yeah, we all
It
got
was
one.
horrible. It was horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, we all have that one birthday. Yeah. But
And those
living
expectations.
yes, yes. But living heroes is I've finally heard this term, but a comic about comics.
Hmm.
So kind of my meta commentary on that while also trying to bring something new by mixing two things that already existed together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a fun time to write, but like I also knew that I was taking some nice jabs at some of the things that bothered me in comics, like, the black superheroes only getting together during February, or because they all got to go to Wakanda.
Right. Well, that's when the flights are cheapest. So you got
That's
to go
yeah,
to
it is when
Wakanda. The flights are low.
yes, it's that
Yeah.
or the X-Men traveling to Japan because they clearly have like some type of discount through Xavier.
Discount. Right.
Man,
They
they
must
went
have
to
some sort of,
Japan a
yeah,
lot.
they did.
Yes.
They certainly did. But I think that's all Logan's fault, I guess,
I
because
think so
he
too.
had to he had to go and fall in love, right?
Yeah, yeah, and then also
Yeah.
train Kitty that one time to be like an efficient nurse.
Shadowcat.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, problematic in some ways, absolutely, but enjoy them nonetheless. I'm someone who watches X3. Just I just put it.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a comfort. So I have a list of superhero movies that are just comfort superhero movies. Fantastic Four, that first one with Jessica Alba and all of them.
Okay. So
Um,
the technically the second one, but okay.
yeah. Oh right. Oh, because I forgot about the Crunch Bar thing from 1994. I'd watched that and yeah,
Uh,
that is a moment. Yes, you are
yeah.
right. So the second one, that is not that horrendous. Whatever. I'm talking Michael
Yeah.
Chiklis. That one. Yes.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
commish.
Yes. I enjoy that. Wolverine Origins, which is horrendous. But I will still put
Wow.
that on.
Okay.
Yeah. Even Catwoman, which is also just, ooh, what are we doing here? But it's
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
part nostalgia, but also I don't know, like I just kind of feel like those movies also are uniquely themselves, like they don't really look like
Hmm.
anything else. And I can kind of like respect it even in all the cringiness of them all. There's just a comfort there where I feel like, we're not really taking ourselves too seriously. I don't want to say that and say that comics is something that shouldn't be taken seriously because I absolutely believe that it should be the opposite. Like we should be taking comics seriously. But
Hmm.
there's something about those movies that we're remembering that it's a comic movie. And it's okay that it's a comic
Yeah.
movie. And I'm not saying like the movies that are out now don't do that, but there is the MCU and the DCEU. There are movies that I do enjoy from there, but after a while, they do start to feel the same. And
They're samey same. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't watch a lot of those repeatedly. I think the only one that maybe Winter Soldier I probably watched more than 3
Same.
times.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, that feels to me like the one that I want to watch again. Like I go, oh yeah, like
yeah, there aren't many Wakanda Forever, surprisingly. Well, not surprisingly. I say surprisingly because it's so long, but I really try to stay
mm,
away from like long movies because I don't want to dedicate that much time on a regular basis to something. But that is one that I will watch. I've watched more than once since it came out, which I didn't even
okay,
watch the first Black Panther movie like that. I watched it twice. Not that I didn't like
okay,
it, I didn't see a reason to really revisit. Especially after Chadwick died, I was just like, "Ooh, this is too much." But for
mm,
Wakanda Forever, something about it, I just go back and I just keep finding things that I missed in it. And the same thing with Winter Soldier. It's a movie that I watch, and there's always something new that I notice, or again, like there's a comfortability there in that movie that I don't get with a lot of the other newer superhero movies. X3
yeah,
is horrific. It is terrible, but it's something about
it
it's
is.
something
It
about
really
Magneto.
is.
It really is something about Magneto having like this mutant rave, this Woodstock happening.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah. Um in the middle of the woods and like, this
Mutant Palooza.
yes, and this bastardization of the Phoenix story, which
Yeah, it
um
it's just it felt so shoehorned. Like they just like, hey, we can throw this into here, and
yeah, and
yeah,
surprisingly that newer Dark Phoenix, ooh, I really hate to defend it. I really do. But I would say that I would make arguments for it because I felt like it was a very real and not real, but more accurate representation of both Charles and Eric as these selfish men who believe that whatever their manifesto is correct and is the right way. And here Gene is kind of stuck in between that. Because I mean, I love Charles Xavier as a character, but I do not like Charles Xavier either at the same time. Because what a terrible boss. But
yeah, he doesn't even pay them.
he doesn't even pay them, and that's what it makes it even worse. Um, I think I wrote a piece about the Phoenix Saga and the Dark Phoenix, that the whole Phoenix Saga in itself being a story of terrible employment. That's what it is at the very end of the day for
when a
everybody.
school when a school turns into your job.
Hmm.
Yeah, but hey, we guarantee you go to this school. I guarantee you'll have a job.
You'll have a
That's
job.
that he
You'll have
100%
food.
employment rate.
Yeah, you'll have
100%
food.
employment rate. Yep.
Food, a roof over your head, all of that. All you have to do is
Gym membership.
a gym membership, all of that. The only thing that you have to give me is possibly your life. And that is a lot of, it's a lot of,
And you didn't want a social life, right? Because you can't
no.
really have.
So, I don't know. Like comics they're just fun.
Oh yeah.
They're fun. Sometimes they're really serious. I think of what is it? Captain America, Black, White, and Blue. Story of Isaiah Bradley. And you have this very even though the art doesn't convey it fully, but you have this very serious story that is mixing with real history,
Hmm. Yeah.
and like the experimentation on these black men to replicate the super soldier serum, and then it only
Yeah.
working for one of them, and then even still him having the powers of Captain America still didn't save him from any of the atrocities that he had to deal with. And
Hmm.
then when he comes home, he still has to deal with them because now he has been jailed and still experimented on. And on top of that, still didn't receive the correct care because I think of just the VA system and just what a how terrible that can be to our veterans. You
It's
it's
a
a great
great parallel.
yes.
Yeah, it's a great parallel. And I think that's what you know. especially, I mean, well, I mean, comics are, comic books are, they're science fiction,
Mhm.
so you have the opportunity to examine a subject in the context of the comic book, model. And
Yeah.
I think that one is a great one that, looks at, like, I think the Tuskegee Airmen,
Yes,
like, I mean,
uh-huh.
it takes that and says, okay, well, how do we apply it to this,
Mhm.
and how can we tell a story that is going to raise awareness in some matter? And I think that's what great comics can do,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you really want to have a heavy social issue, or you want to have a an examination issue, like the Watchmen. This
Yes.
is looking at the model of comic books and saying, hey, here's take a look in the mirror,
Mhm.
and that's when comics are great.
Yeah.
And the model allows this opportunity, mixed with, the soap opera,
Yes.
so you get social commentary and soap opera all kind of rolled in one big punch up. So
Yeah, you do.
when it's done great, it really can do a lot.
It can, and
Yeah.
there's another reason why I hope, we get more, just graphic novels in schools.
Hmm.
I'm just thinking of, there's a gentleman that I spoke to who told me that he had dyslexia, and how reading comics actually helped him, in that regard as far as his reading was
Hmm.
concerned. There's just so many applications, for them, but because people often look and they say the funny pages,
Hmm.
it's really weird. It takes a lot to make somebody laugh. Like it is hard to make someone
It's
laugh.
the hardest thing to do.
It is, but even with that said, people don't often take funny people seriously. I deal
Right.
with that all the time, because a lot of um like my Twitter presence and how I built a following was being funny, and it was being funny with my commentary either on comics or just pop culture in general. And then people then when I'm being serious thinking that I'm still being funny, I'm like, no, I'm being dead serious right now. Like you were laughing, but like I'm being very serious. And when I think of comics, I think of people treating comics kind of as in the same way that they treat comedians. And it's just like, no, very
Hmm.
real things are being said. You may be having a good time, you might be laughing, but like there are serious things being said. Also, writing comics is hard. It's not easy at all. At
No.
all. Um, not even close. There's just so many elements that goes into it. So like it does require a specific skill set too. And I just often wonder if I don't sometimes feel like people really see that. I'm like, this isn't I'm doing math in my head while I'm doing this because I gotta land. Like I have X amount of pages, X amount of
Yeah.
panels per page. I don't want to overload the page. So like, how do I get from point A to my turn? Like where you're supposed to
Hmm.
turn it? Like how do I sync that up? Pacing is always a thing.
Yep.
It's an act.
Yeah.
It's something. So if you have a favorite comic writer, please, or an artist, creator, period, let them know because
Yeah.
it's not a wake up and I want to just write a couple panels and write some dialogue and then I'm done. It's so much more than that.
It also doesn't afford there is very little time for um showing off, because there's such a limited, space. You
Hmm.
don't have, hey, I'm going to do an 8-page little thing here. Like, that's half your book. Like, you don't
Yeah.
get a chance to just vamp or have a thing happen. Like, you have to have everything tight and figured out yeah, as economically as possible.
Yes. And you want to make sure that you're not doing these huge text bubbles that are
Yeah.
taking up and
Yeah.
now they can't see the art too.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's being very concise.
Economical.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And so when I tell people that I think memeing helped me a lot with being as efficient as possible and also doing the one page comics. They were great exercises in saying what you need to say, hopefully as effectively as possible, and getting
Hmm.
out. I try to keep it at 35 words or less, a bubble. I
Yeah,
try, yeah, definitely these days. Now that I've been doing this a little bit longer, but that's hard sometimes.
it definitely is. I give great credit to a multiple many decades in the design industry where the job is to convey is it's like science, convey as complex
Yes.
of a subject as quickly and efficiently as possible. So writing is has to be the same kind of mindset where you just need to have a very clear and concise idea quickly
Mm-hmm.
executed on the page in whatever fashion it has to be, whether it's the artwork or the words in
Yeah.
the bubbles.
Yeah.
So what's going on? What like I mean as we record today, you have of course that people will hear this after the fact, but like you had the milestone, you were involved with the milestone piece that came out today. Um, what else, what can people go, hey, I just missed this, or if they just missed it, they can go find it, or what can they look forward to?
Yeah. So, both Nubia and the Amazons and Nubia Queen of the Amazons, I believe both you can read on the DC Infinite Universe app. So if you already pay for that, you should be able to access those pretty quickly. If not, there's always the library. You can still find them at your local bookstore. Wakanda number one, featuring Shuri. Also, if you have Marvel Unlimited, that is on there, as well as the Family Snick. I wrote a Mayday Parker story that was really fun with her and her brother. Benji for the Spider Verse Unlimited series. And I recently did a Unmay story. Unmay
Oh wow.
in Earth 828. I'm pretty sure that's wrong, but it's another universe unmade who is Spider Man, which was very fun. So you can
You
find,
like it? Okay.
yeah, yeah, I love Spider Man. You can find a lot of stuff there, just digitally or at your bookstore. I'm trying to think, what can I talk about? Oh, so for Marvel, they just announced their Pride book for this year. And I had the wonderful opportunity to create a brand new character with
Ooh,
artist Hector Barros. Very excited for that because I'm doing a legacy character, but very different. Nightshade, who,
oh cool.
yeah, historically was a villain. And then
Mhm.
she got a revamp after her run in with Black Panther and then working with Nighthawk. So I kind of did the legacy thing, but just a little different. So you'll get to check out that new character this June 14th to be exact.
Okay.
Um, and if you're into magic, I hope that you are. Magic the Gathering. I wrote a story for Jace and Veraska for Magic the Gathering, which was really fun because that's all new to me. My friend always teases me because he's like, "Well, you always considered yourself as someone who wasn't into like high fantasy or any of that. Like you're really, sci-fi, aliens, all of that." But that all changed thanks to Nubia. I was like, I had to get into the magic of it all. It definitely
Got to
had
get
to
in
be,
there.
yeah, get into the magic of it all. Then I found that it's not that I don't like those things. It's just that oftentimes I couldn't find a connection there because
Hmm.
again, the representation aspect of it. But it was really fun to learn the characters. Some, not all of them, because Magic the Gathering feels like reading the Bible when I was going through and like trying to look at the lore and everything. But it's been fun to kind of get into some of that world. And now I'm very interested in learning how to play. That's something that I never
Oh,
would have
very
saw coming.
cool.
Yeah, like I'm really interested in that. So if you have a group, a D&D group, do not be afraid to reach out and say, hey, would you be interested in this? Because I might be, if you'll be easy on me and know that I'm a newbie. So those two things, but there is So much more on the way. As I told you before we started recording, that I have so many revisions that I need to get to and other projects
Yes,
that
you
I'm
do.
working on. So I'm staying busy because comics,
Yeah.
the more you, and also the more you write, hopefully the better you get. And I just want to be a better writer every time I approach something. So I'm having fun. I do not want to go back to working in the lab. So it's probably another reason why I work the way that I do, to ensure that that does not happen. But I'm having
Right.
a good time. In the moments that I feel overwhelmed, or like maybe I can't do something, I take a deep breath and I remember, like, you're writing comics.
Hmm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
There is no patient who is waiting on their test results to see, how what type of treatment they need. You're not tagging, lab mice anymore and having to deal with that. Like, it's okay. Like, you're writing comics, you're writing something for someone's entertainment, or hopefully someone's entertainment. Like, you'll be okay.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
one sentence at a time, one word at a time. One
Sure.
thought at a time. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You're bringing joy. Any conventions this year? I mean, are you going to
Yes.
hear back?
So it hasn't been announced yet, but I will be at MomoCon, which I'm very excited
Cool.
for. I've never been there before, so I'm looking forward to that. That's when is that? May 25th through the 28th, I believe. So I
Okay.
think it's like Memorial Day weekend. Heroes Con, of course. Yeah,
Yay.
yeah, it's right up the street, so I'm just like, why not? And also FlameCon in New York, the week of August 11th. So I'll be seeing Beyonce, getting right on the plane, and going up to New York for FlameCon. So I'm really excited about that. So and then also Beer City Comic Con in Asheville.
Awesome. Well, I really had a great time. I was super excited to, when I saw you at the show, and I'm like, okay, yay, we're going to get to talk.
Yes, thank you so much. It's fun. Thank you for having me on. I'm getting more opportunities to kind of really just ramble about what I do and some of the
Mhm.
stuff that, where I'm coming from, which every time I listen back, I'm like, wow, you sound very scatterbrained. But um it makes me a better writer.
I think it's
I
impassioned.
I
That's what you're
am.
saying.
I very much
Yeah.
am. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing your space. Like, it really means a lot.
Yay. Well, I'm can't wait to share this with everyone, and I hope everyone who tunes in and is not familiar with you will go get familiar with you, because you're really doing some great work, and I
Well,
think
thank you.
people have got, you got a lot of stuff coming up. So I mean, it's going to be a good year.
It is a good year. It's busy, but
Yeah.
it's definitely good, and I'm just, excited for whatever will come tomorrow.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you.